How's it going, everyone? It's Sam, and I have with me Cade O'Neill.
Hey, everyone.
We're going to get to something that we were talking about actually recently, something that could be great for altcoins. But first, Bitcoin, 24 hours. We have some big news from Trump. This is getting a lot of people extremely bullish, more than they were already before. We have BlackRock absolutely stealing Bitcoin away from the market, and big event happening tomorrow, and then we have something happening with Jerome Powell too. We'll get into all that and altcoin stuff too. If you don't mind though, hit subscribe first so you can see future videos. Also, I'm going to leave Cade's info underneath the video, so you can go follow his channel. He talks about altcoins more than I do, but also talks about Bitcoin, obviously. We've been having a lot of good conversations. Really bright guy, one of the most successful people that I know, even outside of crypto. So wanted to have him on the channel. Let's start here though. Oh, by the way, there are links to Bydfi and BTCC as well if you want to trade. 24 hours. Of course, we say this a decent amount on the channel, but there's always a reason for it. 24 hours from now, we'll know what BlackRock bought. They've been buying thousands of Bitcoin every single day. When you look at how much available Bitcoin there is for everyone on Earth, I might get my decimal points off, but it's like 0.003, I think, if all the Bitcoin was distributed. Buying 2,000 a day, I mean, that's taking 300 times 2,000. It's taking hundreds of thousands of people off being able to buy the average amount of Bitcoin. And obviously it takes away thousands of whole coiners every single day. The fact is there is a lot of Bitcoin that's already lost. There's a lot of Bitcoin that is held by billionaires that they're never going to sell. They don't need to. So we've had this week after week, 10,000 Bitcoin gone. Michael Saylor's buying. We have Metaplant buying. We're set up for the highest ever monthly close. We don't have a lot of retail in the market. No new retail has come back in yet. So it's getting to the point where we're approaching all-time highs. We're at almost 109,000 right now with a lot of Bitcoin being taken off. People feel bored, but then FOMO hits and then people start accumulating very quickly. They go into the altcoin market, which we'll talk about in a second, which is interesting. But so many people are bullish too, because Trump just, obviously Trump's very bullish on Bitcoin. He just mentioned that even for the cost-cutting Republicans, the ones that want to basically reduce the budget, don't get crazy because we still need to get reelected. So he's basically trying to turn the people that are actually fiscally conservative, want to be cautious about how much the government's spending, and saying, oh, don't get too far down that line. Let's still spend some money so you can get reelected. So I mean, they're talking about raising the debt ceiling. The budget's going to go up. They want to grow out of the debt. So what does money pile into? Bitcoin, real estate, hard assets. Like, the reason all homes have gone up so much is because money printing, and people are willing to pay more for expensive homes. They're willing to buy a lot of real estate properties, and it gets harder and harder for everyone else. So that was extremely bullish. I've seen a lot of people talk about that. Now, moving over to altcoins, Kay and I were talking about something that could be really bullish for altcoins. I obviously don't talk about altcoins as much on my channel, but I've been thinking about this for a while as well. Kate, can you tell them what we were talking about earlier?
Yeah, so we were talking earlier essentially about the ETFs for altcoins, and I've been talking about this a little while on my channel, but the Bloomberg terminal has been essentially forecasting probabilities of certain altcoin ETFs getting approved within 2025, so less than 5 months away basically. And we have certain things like, I believe it was XRP, the index, and Solana. I think all three of those were sitting at 95% probabilities of getting approved in 2025, as well as others being in the 90s, and even things as small as, like, we've heard about in the altcoin section, or this altcoin sector, about SUI. Even SUI has been having a 60% odds of approval per Bloomberg. Again, this is not, this is not somebody speculating somewhere in the dark corners of the internet. This is Bloomberg saying this. And so I think if we see this start to happen and we see kind of that first domino fall, then I think it's going to be a full-on, like, equivalent of a gold rush, essentially kicking alts back down into this, potentially an alt type of season, because we're going to have so much institutional money. One of the things I was mentioning the other day talking about this is we've seen the Circle IPO. Circle is absolutely mooned off of an IPO, really to numbers that, I mean, you can agree or disagree, but in my mind, to numbers that don't really seem to make a whole lot of sense. And so I think this shows the level of institutional demand that there is. And if we start to get more options for institutions to be buying altcoins, this is not only super bullish for Bitcoin, because it, again, continues to push Bitcoin out into the mainstream, but it also is really, really good for altcoins as well.
Yeah, and we talked about it in the sense that like the Circle IPO, I think, has done really well in large fact to because there's nothing else to invest in, right? There's the Bitcoin ETFs, and then there's Coinbase, and people realize how cyclical Coinbase is, but stable coins, the only way to invest is through Circle. There are no altcoins that you can really buy reliably that are, you know, spot oriented or spot ETFs. So there's a lot of capital that's trying to find some place in crypto to go. So when those get approved, and they have staking, especially with 3, 4, 5% staking rewards, that's going to bring in a lot of interest, especially because I don't think there's any asset probably that performs as well as crypto that has any kind of yield. I mean, you could get into real estate, but then again, at the institutional size, you're still banking on it probably performing a little bit worse than the S&P 500, but having a higher yield, like in a REIT or something. But yeah, having 4% or 4% dividends, and then also appreciating 40-50% a year on average, so much volatility. There are already treasury companies too that hold Solana and Ethereum, and I think CoreDAO is held by one treasury company as well. XRP is held by a few, but I can only imagine the FOMO that hits when that starts to happen and people can get 4% dividends.
Yeah, no, I think that the dividends will, I think that's been one thing that we've seen a lot with Ethereum, the Ethereum ETF being a little bit of a guinea pig here, is there's been a lot of kind of whispers and chatter about people trying to kind of transition that into essentially being able to stake. And I think it makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, Bitcoin, the really the only thing you can do with it is hold. And so I think, you know, spot ETF, hard wallet, whatever, it all doesn't really make too much of a difference. Where Ethereum, it does make quite a bit of difference, you know, kind of how you hold it. And so I think the natural kind of evolution for ETFs will be to involve the staking. And with that, of course, you know, that unlocks things like Solana and XRP and, you know, all these other types of things. And I think it'll make a big difference for sure.
Yeah, and we were just talking to their fundamental changes to just last week with the head of, I'm probably going to say this wrong, FHDA, I think it is, putting pressure on Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to be able to allow Bitcoin to be used as an asset when you get mortgages, for them to look at your assets and include crypto and Bitcoin. And that fundamentally changes the ability that people have to hold on to their assets instead of selling them and putting them in cash to go get a loan on some commercial property or residential property or something. And there are just a lot of ways that you're going to be able to get loans against your Bitcoin. I know the ETFs too are working on being able to, they're working on being able to get loans against them or run options on the ETFs. They're going to be, there's like MSTY that runs options on MSTR and gives you yield like 113%. They're going to be the same things for the ETFs, and those are maybe inherently less risky, less volatile than something like MSTR, but also less risky because it's just spot ETF and you're selling options on Bitcoin essentially, as opposed to a treasury company that has yield that is valued at different multiples all the time. So, I mean, there's going to be a lot of ways to get yield and to bring in new investors, people that aren't comfortable with Bitcoin now because either they can't get access to any of the equity without selling if they want to take loans against it, or some people just won't buy certain assets if they can't get yield on them, like sell options or hedge or something like that. So it's going to be interesting to see how this changes and how easy it is to hold on to Bitcoin without having to sell it and use it as collateral for different assets. But it's going to be interesting. We were talking to you earlier today. What were you saying about how traditional finance still views Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of like just from my experience being in more of the traditional finance world, I think there's a general like I guess more like moral high ground type of position, which I think is really interesting. And I think that's because a lot of them have been sidelined up until this point. And so I think there's a level of like almost like FOMO, but in a sense of like spreading FUD, because they don't, you know, they've kind of been sidelined, so they don't want to like essentially have been so wrong on something. And so I think over time, though, as they find ways to be able to make money on a lot of these types of things, that will change for sure. And I think people will become, institutional finance specifically will be a lot more interested because they have ways to kind of benefit and profit on it. One of the things, you know, I think, Sam, you know, I want to talk to you a little bit more about too, is like just the passage of the Genius Bill, because I know we've talked a little bit about that, of how it kind of, kind of opens the door, kind of, you know, leaves that door open a little bit for institutionalized finance and banks and all this type of stuff to really benefit from the kind of the regulation of stable coins in a special way that doesn't really allow stablecoin companies as they exist currently, which is interesting.
Yeah, they're definitely trying to push out the stablecoin companies. And I mean, for them, if they can basically create the same system that they have now that's highly profitable and just do it faster, so like it's easier to transact and stuff, and keep all the business that they have now, they're definitely gonna try to do that. Which maybe that's a good topic for another video. One thing that was interesting, we actually looked at a property today, and they were kind of asking about us a little bit, you know, some younger people looking at a fairly expensive property. And we like to diversify outside of Bitcoin and crypto because we also have YouTube channels that directly are related to, like, our incomes are related to how crypto is doing. So we do diversify outside of just Bitcoin and crypto. But like, they didn't bat an eye when we said that we were, you know, in crypto. There's a bit of respect almost. There was a younger real estate agent, and he's like, oh yeah, we have, you know, basically we have a lot of people that are in crypto and also in real estate. And I think it's becoming more normal. I've met a handful of people over the last year that are selling all their rental properties to go buy Bitcoin. Of course, these are people that don't have a job that's correlated. They might even have a job in real estate, and then they're trying to diversify into Bitcoin, which is almost the opposite of what we're doing as well. But yeah, it is interesting to see how it's changing and how different groups like real estate investors seem to be getting it a little bit earlier than traditional finance maybe. And there's not that like negative feeling towards Bitcoin, especially when you say Bitcoin. I think altcoins, you know, there's definitely a lot, I don't know, more degenerates like in the altcoin game, because a lot of people are just trying to roll the dice and make money instead of buying an asset that's going to be here for the next 100 years. But anyways, that's probably enough on that. We do have another video possibly coming out. I had some people asking specific questions too about Cade to cover some altcoins, so maybe we'll hit on that too. Any closing thoughts, Cade?
Overall, I think what we're seeing is, I mean, you know, many of you have probably seen similar types of graphs on this, but it's like, look at crypto compared to the internet, look at crypto compared to smartphones, look at crypto compared to basically insert new innovation here. And I'm really bullish that we're following that same trajectory. I think it does take a bit of time and a little bit of just like general knowledge in the area for people to understand, you know, what the asset is that they're dealing with and how it could impact the world and how it's not going to kill everybody or, you know, whatever. So yeah. I do think we'll see a lot of that shift over time, particularly as wealth continues to transfer to younger people. I mean, if you look at younger people, massively optimistic and massively bullish toward you know, crypto and Bitcoin specifically. So I think it's only up from here. Just, you know, whether it's tomorrow or next week or 2 months from now or 10 years from now, you know, it's hard to say for sure, but directionally I'm quite pleased with where we're going.
Yeah, I met with someone a couple months ago who has been very successful, has a handful of very expensive properties on prime real estate, and their kids were trying to get them to sell them off to go buy Bitcoin instead because it's lower maintenance, it performs better, and yeah, it's interesting to see that. Like, if heaven forbid they passed away, like automatically they would sell and just put it into Bitcoin. And keep in mind, like, Jerome Powell, the head of the Fed, has talked about Bitcoin as digital gold. Trump, our president, is setting up an ETF, a Bitcoin ETF, a Bitcoin treasury company, and what else? There's something else Bitcoin related to. Like, he's doing everything he can to push Bitcoin forward. We have the biggest financial institution in the world worth trillions and, what is that, 9 figures, 10 figures? I don't even know, more than that. 12, 13 figures, $10 trillion pushing Bitcoin all the time. So we're in a good spot. Obviously, sometimes you just have to wait a little bit. We're within 2% of all-time highs, 3% of all-time highs. Like, all of a sudden, I don't know, some billionaire decides to buy and we're back at all-time highs or something. So yeah, just be patient. Check out Cade's channel underneath the video. Really appreciate you guys watching. If you want to check out Bydfi or BTCC, WEEX, BLOFIN, a lot of them have trading competitions, so it's just like free money if you're going to trade already, and they have demo trading if you want to practice trading. But I use leverage. I think Cade uses leverage. A lot of our friends use leverage in small amounts to get better returns. So of course, do your own due diligence. Check that out. Thank you so much. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.